Hey everybody, christopherodd here. Today we're doing a follow-up or epilogue for the most recent season of XCOM. What happened to all of your favorite soldiers? It's a good question, and we're going to address some of that today, so buckle up. You can kind of treat this as a podcast. It's not going to be heavy with visuals. There will be a few images as we go along, but if you want to just sit back and listen, then that is totally cool also. We will have news very shortly about the next season of XCOM, which is going to be starting in January. We've been hard at work already on a few different things that we're going to address and make it, hopefully, the best season of XCOM that we've ever had. And that means changing up some of the late game challenges. We've done a couple of revamps on different classes and psionics. It's really exciting, and all I can say is stay tuned for information on that. We'll be giving you ample time to submit your characters, so if you have an idea that you're thinking about, get it on paper, and you'll be ready. So, on to the epilogue. Here we go. After XCOM 1, there was a silence over the entire world. It was as if no one could breathe for a moment. Everyone would remember what they did that day, down to the minute. Everyone would remember that a small group of resistance fighters supported an even smaller one to end the Elders for all time. Everyone would remember that in that very moment that the sacrifices that were made meant something. The men and women of XCOM had changed the world and would keep changing it for years to come. Would they all be good? Would they be bad even? Only time would tell. But for those that made the ultimate sacrifice, they would be remembered. Anna Skinner Ramirez, Peter Rowdy Osei, Betrayus Mastermind Zool, Helen Black Ghost Giroux, Murasakino Hexen Barura, Falk Brother Dorn, Devin Spectre Hughes, Ethan Ace White, William Hunter Pierce, Marie Gentle Lebrun, Rylas Dro Andro, Axel Ostergaard, Peppa Bear Prohatska, Solo Deathless Lucius, David Teach Lively, John Cowboy McCoy, Jeanette Mrs. Treason Saran, Takio Wrath Nanashi, Ray 65 Low, Ilakata Studs Twister, Alexander Frostbite Leovich, and Oliver Prodigal Son Kaz. Once the network tower was hacked, Liu Short-Fused Chen took charge of a platoon of resistance fighters and fought a grueling battle with Advent forces in the street. She anxiously awaited the outcome of Operation Leviathan and the fate of her bondmate. The last of Advent's defenders surrendered when their masters fell silent, and soon after she received a call from Rain Ripper Abraxa. XCOM had won. Crying with joy and relief, Liu walked over to a pillar, sat down, and looked up at the darkening sky. There would still be some on both sides that would continue fighting. The stubborn, the fanatics, the people that were consumed by loathing and hatred. But for her, the fighting was over. She looked up at the sky and imagined what the future would hold. While Operation Leviathan was taking place, another mission, Operation Kraken, consisting of Alessandra Calitris Stevens, Britney Kit Kat Williams, Irene Iconic Conrad, John Zamboni Olafson, Olivia Cuttlefish Maynard, Teresa Phoenix Wolf, and Victor Eve Jenkins struck at the undersea alien laboratory running Project Terror from the deep, led by traitorous XCOM scientist Muriel Weaver and the Elder Nergal. Although the strike team was heavily wounded, they all returned alive, and the deaths of both Weaver and Nergal helped seal Advent's fate together with Leviathan. John Zamboni Olafson married Alessandra Stevens, and they had many children. Inspired and accompanied by Rylas Dro Andro's mysterious crow, he became an amateur archaeologist and anthropologist. He traveled the world with his wife, seeking out and preserving folklore and following the crow's guidance to uncover ancient relics. His ultimate goal, to find out how much truth was embedded in Earth's religions and discover if there were other godlike beings in the universe besides the Elders. Alessandra would go on to host a television show entitled Restoring Earth with Ali Stevens, showcasing the ongoing efforts of XCOM to restore ecosystems that had been destroyed by the aliens and their invasive species. Alessandra would become known as the David Attenborough of the post-Advent world. Through it all, they never forgot the friends that they had made: Victor, Olivia, Britney, Kaylee, Thomas, Aisling, even Irene. And they never forgot the fallen heroes of the war. Day Smug's Riley never recovered from her experimentation and use of the meld. Fellow engineer Sophie Hoffman provided palliative care in the 6 weeks after Leviathan before Day passed. Sophie reported that Day passed peacefully, holding her hand, and that Day's spirit and death had inspired her to seek out more compassionate ways to resolve the issues presented by the Lost. Soon after Leviathan, Kaylee Wraith Parker left XCOM and joined Stephanie Elixir Brown to hunt down Stephanie's nemesis, Rockwell and his Liberty Alliance. They rendezvoused with Jawbone Front, a resistance militia based in the New Oregon region, who had been tracking the Liberty Alliance's nefarious activities, as well as the mysterious parasitic bloodworm infestation that seemed to follow in their wake. Rockwell was found in an abandoned Advent Black site, fused to an encroaching biomass that had run rampant throughout the facility. After a long and arduous battle with his mutated forces, both Rockwell and the Black site were destroyed in a massive psionic explosion. Nobody knew quite what happened, only that Stephanie emerged from the rubble minutes later with a strange shadowy figure beside her. Stephanie has since gone on to be an advocate within the front, helping other awakened scions engage with their abilities in safe and healthy ways. Her romantic relationship with the shadowy figure in question, a rogue ethereal by the name of Fail Bentau, is still going strong to this day. With the threat eliminated, Kaylee bid Stephanie farewell and the two friends went their separate ways. Her duty fulfilled, the Templar would pursue her dream of becoming a prolific singer and dancer around the reclaimed city centers. She would become a well-beloved celebrity for humans and alien citizens for many years to come. Sarah Firebrand Elazar revealed herself to be a thin man shortly after the team returned from Operation Leviathan. The revelation that their Skyranger pilot was an alien defector caused little commotion among the war-weary members of XCOM that did not already know by this point, but it was a calculated move to get them used to living peacefully alongside aliens and former Advent in the future. Once Rain Ripper Abraxa had fully recovered from the mission, the two set off to contact Rain's former Advent squadmates and the Thin Man survivors of the initial invasion, as a first step to helping them integrate into the post-war world. 5 years after Leviathan, a slightly older Britney Williams stopped as her bicycle chain broke. She was on a college campus. The wind blew and she paused and looked down. A small piece of paper, a candy wrapper, had gotten caught up under her shoe. She looked down and picked it up and smiled. It was a Kit Kat candy wrapper. Everything flooded back. Living in the holds of the Avenger, waiting for a chance to be recruited, working in the bar and being afraid of scary helmet lady Daniil, the covert ops, the shopping trips, the Bali Beach Bash Bikini Barbecue, Operation Kraken, and the dolphins that she and Marcus had seen together. Not everything during the war against Advent was violent after all. The soldiers and staff found time to enjoy one another's company when they could. One such time was the Bali Beach Bash Barbecue, where many enjoyed sandcastles, volleyball, and fun in the sun. Even as the war continued, they remembered that what they fought for was life, and just fighting was not living. So led by Britney Kit Kat Williams, there was an unforgettable event on the beaches of Bali, a place where fun, sports, and even some romance happened. She looked up and called out, "Marcus!" But no one answered. Only the wind blew harder. She held the wrapper and called out, "I hope you found love, Marcus Kincaid." She let the Kit Kat wrapper go as tears ran down her face. The wrapper flew higher and higher as the wind carried it away until it was gone. Kit Kat was no more, but Britney Williams, the marine biologist's life, was just starting. That did not happen. Marcus Tyrant Kincaid's life after the war was less than glamorous. True to his message to the commander, he left XCOM 8 days after Operation Leviathan, as soon as his wounds permitted. He stayed at his sister's haven for a few months before moving into the now freed city centers in February 2037. He closed himself off from the outside world as much as physically possible, having still not recovered from the loss of his beloved, Marie Gentil Lebrun, more than a year prior. In August of the same year, Marcus was visited by Brennick Arrakis, the former Advent captain responsible for the death of Marie and the leader of the Advent squad that defeated XCOM in Operation Senseless Tears. The hybrid came to apologize and atone for his actions. Arrakis reports that Marcus readily forgave him, but the marksman remained despondent and left him with grave concerns for his safety. Arrakis swore to watch over Marcus from the shadows. He destroyed enough lives already and would do anything in his power to prevent the death of another XCOM operative. Not one more. Adviv Jenkins 2468, under his new name, Victor, would remain a vigilante for years, hell-bent on destroying anything left of Advent. Eventually, those he saved would follow him and view him as a leader. The group, calling itself the Lost Syndicate, moved into an abandoned tower in a lost infected zone. Victor eventually married a Viper named Hannah and adopted 2 children, 2 young abandoned aliens. His son Lenny is a sectoid who thinks of people's minds as playthings. His daughter, named after his former comrade Libby, is a neonate Viper who enjoys playing with acid. The Lost Syndicate has grown, but remains like a family dedicated to protecting its members while exterminating anything Advent-related, freeing slaves, and selling plunder. To this day, Victor thinks about Chloe and Blue. He continues to support them financially and says that they would be welcome to join his family. And family means everything to him. After the defeat of the Elders, Aisling Triage Keegan and Thomas Nova Steele married each other on the prow of the Avenger. Afterwards, the 2 of them settled down in a small town in Alaska and moved into a rather large log cabin. They eventually had 3 children, 2 girls and a boy, Maeve, the eldest daughter, Caleb, their son, and Kira, their youngest. If that wasn't enough, the newlyweds also adopted a baby Arctic fox called Snowball. Aisling adapted to civilian life rather quickly. She set up her own clinic and began treating any and all who came through her door, quickly becoming loved by the close-knit community. Thomas, however, took much longer to adapt. After winning a war he had been fighting for over 20 years, he felt lost. After several months, however, he succeeded. It began with a single lost child. All he did was call in some favors to reunite them with their family, then another and another. Eventually, this movement became a massive charity as grateful families began helping one another. This network grew to span the entire globe, helping millions of those displaced by the war. The charity was slandered, however, when they began helping aliens find homes and families of their own, like the Lost Syndicate. This fell on deaf ears as they continued regardless. There were those, however, who had no family or anywhere else to go. As such, they were adopted and raised by the charity as well as given the surname Steele. In the years that followed, the charity created a motto: "Family are we, forged through war, bound by steel." After her last mad dash across the Advent Network Tower, Daniil Variable Tirani disappeared for a few short months. Where she was and what she might have been doing remain unknown. After the inauguration of Liberty Libby Bell as President of the United States of America, Daniil resurfaced as a special agent for the United States Secret Service. Leaked photographs emerged of a low-key lunch with the new president, revealing Daniil drinking water from a yellow cup as she played a game of chess with her friend. President Libby Bell continued following her purpose to help others, leading the rebuilding efforts domestically and abroad after the war, and ensuring that another war like this wouldn't happen again by facilitating peaceful retaliations with surrendering Advent hybrid and alien forces. She lives in the White House with her new family, the father and daughter that she found in the gas station before joining XCOM, Commander Hank Montrose, retired US Navy, and Liara Montrose, who became Libby's adoptive daughter and the future brigade commander of the US Naval Academy class of 2045. Adriana Luna Lozano reunited with Verge after the war, his identity finally unmasked. Fearing that some within XCOM and the Resistance would seek him out and kill him in revenge for the many lives he could not save, she would guard the sectoid and vouch for him until he finally became a part of the Chimera Squad. Then she began formal training as an aerospace pilot. Finally, the world that Adriana knew was over. It was time for her to taxi its people to the stars. Olivia Cuttlefish Maynard returned to Nautilus and retired from active duty, instead training a new generation of agents who would protect biodiversity and solve future problems that only clandestine agents can solve. Among her students was Britney Kit Kat Williams, who returned to college to become a marine biologist. Grateful for her rescue that enabled her to survive Senseless Tears, Olivia sought out and became friends with Verge, the latter of whom was just beginning his career in City 31's Chimera Squad. 3 years after her retirement from XCOM, she also married Rufus Galavier, her other savior, longtime boyfriend, and partner on many missions during the war. Although he never did end up being recruited by XCOM, Rufus Sparrow Galavier served the Resistance in XCOM as much as he could, assisting with various auxiliary missions and general repairs while the Elders were defeated. After marrying Olivia, Rufus continued to teach Chloe, Rain Ripper Abraxa's adopted daughter, about all things tech-related until she and Rufus decided that she'd learned all she needed to from him. They remain friends to this day. Rufus now works as a tech advisor and white hat hacker for various governmental entities around the world. Not long after Operation Leviathan, Willis Sonny Davis, XCOM's mechanical engineer, left the organization and joined the Rocky Roads Haven in California. His technical expertise would become a huge asset for the settlement. He would settle down and marry his beloved Ingrid Jansen while living there, adopting a couple of orphans as family. For the first time in his life, he's very happy. Dr. Richard Tygan spent his last days aboard the Avenger tending to the wounded. In early December 2036, he took his leave of XCOM, working in various roles throughout the rebuilding efforts until he was called upon by President-elect Liberty Bell to act as Surgeon General. He authored 3 books before his retirement in 2051. He now runs a small bakery in New Chicago, selling pastries inspired by his late mother's recipes. Tygan adopted Abigail Blue Barrymore, the orphan child of Alexander Schaefer, one of the doctors aboard the Avenger. He did all he could to give Blue a happy, normal life in spite of all the hardships of a rebuilding world. In part because of her psionic gifts, Tygan spent much of his time studying the long-term effects of the use of psionics by former soldiers and XCOM personnel. The two co-authored a book on the use of psionics as a psychological treatment modality. He also spent much time studying AI, inspired by the case of the rogue AI Julian, now known as Julian Chen. During his time aboard the Avenger, Tygan was able to repair the damage to Julian's neural network and return him to relatively normal function. Once a foe to XCOM, Julian became a powerful ally and contributed to many discoveries in the Shadow Chamber. In return, Tygan constructed him a humanoid body, and the two remain friends to this day. Abigail Blue Barrymore left the Avenger with her new adoptive father, Dr. Richard Tygan. She would attend a STEM prep academy and later study at the National University of New Alexandria in the United States, during which time she would marry the girlfriend she met on the Avenger years earlier, Chloe Abraxa, Rain Ripper Abraxa's daughter. After completing her master's in bioinformatics, she patented a safe and effective process to enhance the natural, latent psionic abilities of humans and hybrids. Her company, Renaissance Cybernetics, is doing quite well. She also runs the Dr. Alexander Schaefer Charitable Trust, which each year oversees the awarding of both the Dr. Richard Tygan Scholarship and Day Riley Grant for the Courageous. She and Chloe adopted twin girls Ricky Alexandria and Rain Victoria. Anya Krasnaya Ranovska, XCOM's armorer, returned home to Ukraine after Operation Leviathan. She kept her XCOM equipment as a memento of a period of her life that would forever be remembered. As the weeks and months pass, Anya enjoys the time she spends with her family. Occasionally, she hears about President Bell in the news and reminisces about the time spent with her and Daniil. Anya continues to work with machinery at an auto repair shop, more ordinary than the armory of the Avenger, but she likes it regardless. Someday she plans on running for mayor in her quaint little town, but for the time being, she simply lives a quiet life. Scientific assistant Abyssier Lordissimus left the Avenger a few weeks before the attack on the Advent Network Tower. He tried to get one region to surrender peacefully to XCOM. Unfortunately, he didn't make it early enough, and as he got the Advent local forces to surrender, citizens were already rioting. They didn't listen to Abyssier as he tried to negotiate between them and the Advent forces, and Abyssier was shot. The Advent Regional Commander Tower was burnt, and Abyssier's dueling deck burned with it. After Alexander Jurassic Ebony left the Avenger, he started teaching geology lectures at the Haven for humans and aliens alike. He's able to facilitate a learning environment for all by using the Psi-Gem to break the verbal language barriers. On his days off, he explored the surrounding area for fossils. He ended up rediscovering the Viper's nest he saw when the Viper King was still alive. The region had warmed up, and he discovered the area was all but abandoned except for a baby viper that needed a father figure. Despite his best efforts to lose sight of the creature, the small thing followed him home. Now Alexander's the adopted father of the tiny viper as he teaches the masses that gather at the Haven about the world they live in. Before he was killed in battle, the skirmisher Betrayus mastermind Zool knew that Advent would create another commander to replace him. It drove him to hunt down several of Advent's commanders and was what drove him to join XCOM. Though he did not live to see the end of the war, he died knowing that XCOM would one day defeat the Elders. Advent eventually created the commander that he long feared, simply known as Commander XG2. Commander XG2 predicted that the Chosen would defeat XCOM, but instead lived to watch as Advent fell. Chaos engulfed city centers across the world following Operation Leviathan. The alien and hybrid soldiers of Advent were initially disoriented by the sudden loss of their ethereal masters. Many were unable to organize or properly defend themselves from the rising onslaught of resistance forces and rebelling citizens. Even as curfews were enacted, it was inevitable that humanity would retake their world. Although several started to defect or surrender, either due to their newfound free will or for survival's sake, a chunk of the survivors retained their devout loyalty to the Elders. The Loyalists would fall under the few high-ranking commanders that remained, such as Bellis Mar, who years later would lead the terrorist faction known as Sacred Coil. 4 months after XCOM's assault in the Elder Stronghold, the Pentagon was captured by resistance forces in a brutal battle against 1,500 Mutons under the direct command of High Lord Drask. The resulting siege of the Pentagon forced the trapped Mutons into desperate nighttime raiding parties to capture humans surrounding the building. These prisoners were then executed in front of the resistance forces laying siege. It is still debated whether this cruel and inhumane tactic was meant to cause fear or to anger the soldiers into launching a costly assault, but it did both. High Lord Drask was killed some days after he defended a breach in the Pentagon's outer walls. Had he not died from his wounds, he would have been tried as a war criminal. Freed from the Elders' control, Admiral Uobop of Muton Military Services, MMS, joined up with her fellow Naval High Command to reestablish their company as the interstellar private military contractor that they had been before the Elders took them over. Grateful to XCOM for their freedom, MMS chose XCOM as their favored client, now defending the independence of the same planets over whom they had once been the oppressors. Uobop herself, however, remained vigilant should the Auburn Wing, an enemy serving the mysterious looming threat that had driven the Elders to Earth, reappear. Although official records and plenty of evidence, including footage and weapons taken as trophies, indicate that all 3 Chosen were permanently killed by XCOM, some of their artifacts disappeared after their deaths, and later, legends began to stir up of mysterious threats stalking the streets of City 31. Some speak of the Hunter returning as a hitman for hire, revived by a hidden, experimental alternative sarcophagus. Others tell of the ghosts of the Warlock using a vanished side gem as a new body, murdering people in their sleep. Maybe one day the world will know the truth of these stories, but for now, unconfirmed legends, they remain. Jaco McWoods, the XCOM representative to the Reapers, reviewed the digital information that was recovered from several Avatar facilities, such as the Advent Forge. While there were many insightful findings and horrible revelations among the data, what caught Jaco's eye the most was a series of logs from the head custodian of the Advent Forge, who went by the name of Waldex. The different point of view Waldex had due to their free will, compared to other hybrids, was something which led Jaco to the conclusion that Waldex, despite their strong loyalty to the Elders, had loved Earth and those who inhabited it, which might have been why, in the end, Waldex personally confronted XCOM without backup, nor made any serious attempts to fight back. Perhaps Waldex had a crisis of moral conscience and thus allowed XCOM to take the prototype Avatar? Jaco was sure of this assumption once he opened the final log, which was dated mere hours before their demise. It read, "Do you know why my favorite animal on this planet happens to be the bulldog? In a way, they remind me of my own kind, the hybrids as humans call them. I suppose officially you could say they helped me train for my job as custodian of newborn hybrids, but in truth, I simply just like bulldogs." This concludes the stories of some of the characters on both sides of the war. Human and alien alike have been liberated, and Earth is saved. The price was great, and they doubtless will face more challenges, and perhaps even greater threats in the future. But for now, good has triumphed over evil.